The streets were unusually quiet that night, the kind of silence that makes you hear your own heartbeat more clearly than anything around you. Street lights stretched into long amber lines across my windshield as I drove, unsure whether I was doing the right thing or stepping into a mistake I wouldn't be able to take back. My phone still sat on the passenger seat, screen glowing faintly with the last call I had received, Ian's voice replaying in my mind, soft but serious, telling me he needed to talk to me urgently. It wasn't like him to call at night, and that alone had set something turning inside me. I kept thinking about the argument I had with Arsel earlier in the evening. We had been standing in the living room, his voice sharp, mine tired. He had accused me of spending too much time studying, too much time with my tutor, too much time away from him. What I couldn't explain to him was that it wasn't about the studying or the hours, it was about how distant we had become without realizing it. He didn't understand the silence I carried, and I didn't understand the weight he felt. By the end of it, both of us were left frustrated, with no solution except the space between us growing even wider. As I turned into Ian's lane, a faint drizzle began to wash the dust from the air. His porch light was the only warm glow on the entire street. I parked my car, sat still for a moment, and wondered why my chest tightened every time I thought about seeing him. He was my tutor, nothing more, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. But the truth was harder to admit. Something in me trusted him in a way I didn't trust many people. He opened the door as if he had been standing behind it, waiting. He wasn't in his usual crisp, formal clothes. Instead, he wore a simple t-shirt and loose pajama trousers, his hair slightly messy, like he had been pacing. For a moment, neither of us spoke. There was something in his eyes, something quiet, tired, emotional, that told me he didn't call me over for notes or assignments. "Come in," he said softly. The air inside his house felt different from the usual study sessions. No open books, no laptop, no table lamp glowing on his desk. It was dim, calm, almost too personal. I followed him down the small hallway, past shelves filled with books and old photographs, until he stopped at the door of a separate room, one I had never seen before. He opened it and stepped aside for me to enter. It was a small study room, but not the one we used for classes. The lights were warm, the walls lined with more books, and everything smelled faintly of paper and cedar. A single clock ticked loudly in the corner, its sound filling the space between us. When he closed the door behind us, the click echoed deeper than it should have. He didn't sit. I didn't sit. We just stood there for a moment, breathing in the same heavy silence. "I know it's late," he finally said, his voice low, as if afraid of waking someone. "But I needed to talk to you before I lost the courage." I frowned slightly, unsure what he meant. He looked at me like he was searching for the right words, the ones he had probably rehearsed a dozen times before calling me. "Today you looked different," he continued. "Distracted, hurt." I couldn't ignore it. I swallowed, my throat thicker than usual. "It's nothing. Just a fight at home." "A fight because of me?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer, but my silence was enough. He took a step closer, not too close, just close enough that I could feel the tension he had been carrying. His hands were trembling slightly. I had never seen him like this, vulnerable, unsure, almost fragile. "I didn't call you here to make anything worse," he said. I just couldn't pretend anymore. Not tonight. My heart thumped hard against my ribs. I didn't know what he was about to say, but part of me already felt it coming, like something that had been silently growing for weeks finally arriving at its breaking point. "Ian," I whispered, unsure if I was asking him to speak or asking him to stop. He looked away for a second, took a deep breath, then met my eyes again. "I just need you to hear me. That's all." The room felt smaller, warmer, drowning in the weight of the moment. Everything, from the faint ticking of the clock to the distant drizzle outside, seemed to disappear. And then he lifted his eyes toward mine again, with a truth he had been holding back for far too long. For a moment, he didn't speak. He just breathed, slowly, like the words were too heavy to lift. The warm light of the room softened the edges of his face, but nothing could soften the tension inside him. When he finally spoke, it was almost a whisper, more confession than conversation. "I've been trying not to feel this," he said, eyes locked onto mine. "But every day it gets harder." My breath caught. I knew exactly what he meant, even before he said it, because I had felt it too, in the quiet moments during our study sessions, in the way he explained things with more patience than anyone else ever did, in the way he checked on me when I looked tired or worn down. But hearing him say it, that was different. Real, unavoidable. Ian, please, I murmured, not even sure what I was asking. He shook his head, stepping back as if needing space from his own confession. You don't have to say anything. I don't want you to feel guilty, or cornered, or confused. I just couldn't keep pretending nothing was happening. His voice cracked slightly at the end. I swallowed hard, feeling every ounce of the conflict that had been clouding my chest for weeks. I never wanted this to happen, I whispered. I didn't plan it. I know, he replied. Neither did I. A thick silence settled between us, the kind that feels like it's holding its breath. He finally sat down on the edge of the desk, his shoulders sinking, his eyes soft but wounded. You've been distant, he said. Not just from me, from yourself, from your own life, and today, when I saw you walk in, it felt like something was breaking inside you. He wasn't wrong. I fought with Arsel again, I admitted quietly. Everything becomes a misunderstanding. Every little thing turns into something bigger. I keep trying, but somehow I feel more alone than ever. Ian nodded slowly, his jaw tightening in empathy. You're not alone, not in the way you think. I looked at him, and in that moment, all the unspoken emotions that had been tangled inside me began to surface. The way he looked at me, not with desire, but with concern, with understanding, with the kind of attention I had been starved of, made my chest ache. Why did you call me here tonight? I finally asked. He exhaled shakily. Because I needed to tell you the truth before it ate me alive. Then, softer, he added, and because I didn't want you to go through whatever you're going through, alone. Quote. He stood up again, slowly, as if every movement required courage. When he stepped toward me this time, I didn't step back. I care about you, he said quietly. More than I intended to. More than I should. The last sentence lingered in the air, trembling, fragile. I felt my pulse quicken. My hands grew cold. My heart, warm. I hated how right it felt. I hated how wrong it was. I hated that I wished I could stay in that room longer. Ian, my voice cracked, but I pushed through it. This can't happen. You know that. He nodded, eyes glistening with a sadness he tried to hide. I know. I'm not saying anything should happen. I just couldn't keep pretending I don't feel what I feel. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel his breath, close enough that my own breath began to shake. There was no touch, no crossing of lines, just a storm of emotions meeting in the space between us. Do you feel anything? He asked quietly, as if afraid of the answer. I closed my eyes for a second, because that was the only way to stop myself from crumbling. When I opened them again, he was still there, still waiting, still trembling slightly. Yes, I whispered. I feel something, but I shouldn't. He let out a breath that sounded like relief and sorrow mixed together. Thank you for not lying. Another silence filled the room, thicker than before, warmer, more dangerous. And then he moved just a little closer, close enough that our shoulders almost touched, close enough to feel the heat between us. For a moment, it felt like the entire world had narrowed to that small room, that ticking clock, that late-night confession. I could see the fear in his eyes, the hope, the guilt, the desire. He could see the same in mine. And then, just before the moment could become something we couldn't undo, he stopped. His breath caught. His eyes softened. I won't cross the line, he said firmly, though his voice trembled. Even if I want to. Even if you want to. It wouldn't be right. I nodded, my throat tight. He stepped back, just a little, breaking the magnetic pull between us. But I needed you to know the truth, he added. Because hiding it was hurting both of us. The room felt colder after he stepped back. The emotion still hummed in the air, but the moment, the dangerous, beautiful, forbidden moment, had been released. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. Whatever happens next has to be your choice, he said softly. And that was when I realized that the night wasn't over yet. There was still something I needed to say, something I needed to confront, before either of us could walk out of that room unchanged. The night air outside the room felt cooler when I finally stepped out, as if the walls themselves had been holding in all the tension, all the unsaid emotions. Ian followed behind me slowly, keeping a respectful distance, giving me space to breathe. The house felt too quiet now, too aware of everything that had just been spoken between us. I picked up my keys from the table near the entrance, my fingers trembling slightly. I didn't know if I should say goodbye, or apologize, or pretend the night hadn't changed everything. Before I could decide, Ian spoke. "I'm sorry if this complicated your life," he said softly. "That wasn't my intention." I turned toward him. His eyes were gentle, not demanding, not pleading, just honest. I shook my head. "You didn't complicate anything. The complications were already there. You just put them into words." He lowered his gaze, as if the truth weighed too heavily to hold eye contact. For a moment, neither of us moved. There was nothing left to confess, nothing left to hide. Only the raw, fragile truth of two people who felt something they weren't supposed to. I forced a small, pained smile. "Thank you, for being honest." He nodded, but didn't smile back. "Take care of yourself," he murmured. "And don't let this ruin what you already have. You deserve clarity, not confusion." His words stayed with me as I walked out into the cool night. When I sat inside my car, I didn't start the engine immediately. The silence pressed against me like a heavy blanket. My thoughts were spiraling. Ian's trembling voice, the way he stood close enough for me to feel his warmth, the way he stepped back before the moment crossed a line neither of us could return from. I drove home slowly, every red signal feeling like another moment to rethink my entire life. By the time I reached my house, my chest felt tight, full of emotions that had no easy place to go. The lights inside were still on. Arsel was awake. I stepped into the living room, expecting another argument. Instead, I found him sitting on the sofa, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. He looked up when he heard me enter, his eyes tired and red. "You came back late," he said quietly. "I know," I replied. I needed to clear my head. He stood slowly, uncertainty clouding his expression. "Did you go to see him?" There it was, the unspoken truth neither of us could avoid anymore. "Yes," I said. No excuses, no lies. He swallowed hard, looking away as if preparing himself for an answer that would hurt. Should I be worried? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the entire night settle on my shoulders. "Arsel, I'm not cheating on you. Nothing happened. Nothing crossed the line. But I won't lie, things are not okay. Not between us. Not inside me." He closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I always felt like I was losing you. I just didn't know why." I stepped closer, not to comfort him, but to speak honestly. We stopped understanding each other. We started talking less and assuming more. I felt alone, even when I was with you. And I know you felt the same. He ran a hand over his face, trying to steady his breathing. "Do you feel something for him?" It was the hardest question of the night. The one I had been avoiding even in my own mind. "I feel seen by him," I said carefully. "But that doesn't mean I want to leave you. It just means something inside me is broken, and I'm trying to figure out why." Arsel looked at me, hurt, but calmer than before. "Then maybe we both need time," he said. "Not a breakup, just space. To think, to understand ourselves before we keep hurting each other." I nodded. It wasn't a punishment, and it wasn't an escape. It was the first sensible decision we had made in weeks. Later that evening, after he went to the bedroom to sleep alone, I stepped onto the balcony. The city was quiet again, like it had been when the night began. But something inside me had changed. I thought about Ian, the confession, the restraint, the honesty. I thought about Arsel, the exhaustion, the fear, the hope still flickering in his voice. And I thought about myself, not as someone caught between two people, but as someone rediscovering what it meant to be truthful, to stop running, to stop hiding. I knew I had decisions to make in the days ahead. Hard ones, honest ones. But I also knew one thing with complete clarity: love isn't only about choosing a person. It's also about choosing who you become. That night, for the first time in a long time, I chose to face myself.